What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right. So, when it comes to cinema or film, television, whatever, some actors have success early. Some actors peak earlier. Whether you're talking about Mickey Rooney, Shirley Temple, Emmanuel Lewis, Gary Coleman, even Jaleel White, right? Urkel. Their success came earlier. With some stars, success comes later. Groucho Marx didn't appear in a movie until he was 39 years old with the Marx Brothers. Lucille Ball, who was a struggling actress in the 30s and 40s, didn't see success until she was 40 years old with I Love Lucy. Morgan Freeman didn't see success until he was in his 50s. Esther Roll didn't see success until she was well into her 50s. Estelle Getty was in her 60s when she finally saw fame with the Golden Girls. Hell, George Burns, even though he did have some success with the comedy act Burns and Allen with his wife, he didn't see solo success, and he didn't have his greatest success until he was nearly 80 years old. You know, shit. One guy that comes to mind that didn't have success until he was late in his life was Burt Mustin. Now, he might not be a name that registers with today's fans, but if you grew up watching movies, sitcoms in the 60s and 70s, you remember him, Burt Mustin. Success didn't come to him until he was well into his 60s. So you get the point. Louise Fletcher falls into that category. Louise Fletcher started a career when she was younger, but she was considered not attractive enough and too tall. So she gave up her career to raise her family. But she gave it another shot. And her career became wildly successful. She was given the role of a lifetime as the wicked, evil Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest from 1975. A role in which she would go on to win an Oscar. Well, Louise Fletcher died yesterday at the age of 88. She passed away in her sleep in her home in France. She was 88 years old, as I said. She was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1934. The second of four children. And she received a bachelor's degree in drama from the University of North Carolina in 1957. And she had some middling success back in the late 50s and early 60s, starring mostly in westerns because of her height. And most of the stars in westerns at that time, you know, Chuck Connors, James Arness. Most of these guys were well over 6 feet tall, so that compensated for her height being 5'10". But she didn't really have a lot of success earlier on. Most of her success came later on in her 70s and 80s. Excuse me, in the 70s and 80s. And in addition to her role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, she also starred in The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, The Cheap Detective, The Lady in Red, The Magician of Lublin, Brainstorm, Firestarter, Invaders from Mars, Flowers in the Attic, Two Moon Junction, the martial arts film Best of the Best, Blue Steel. She was in Virtuosity. She had a role in the Steven Seagal film On Deadly Ground. The She was in that movie High School High with John Lovitz, which is a parody of high school movies in 1996. And she starred in Cruel Intentions. You might remember her as Sebastian's aunt in that movie. And she also starred in television movies: The Karen Carpenter Story, Nightmare on the 13th Floor, Tales from the Crypt. She was in an episode of that series. Dream On. She was in Joan of Arcadia. So many different programs over the last several decades. And, she'll be missed. She was a great actress. She was not what you would call a standard beauty. And she was never really cast for her looks per se, but for her acting range and for the versatility that she displayed on film. So once again, Louise Fletcher, may not know the name, but you probably know the face, passed away recently at the age of 88.